We've created an economic model through globalization that says the only way of measuring success in business is through the bottom line. That has driven a voracious economic model that doesn't take into account sustainability, doesn't take into account the need of future generations, and is concentrated on short-termism. And Ireland, for example, our economy has been wrecked by short-termism and profit-taking.
We're in the universal acceptance stage now at the banks. Everyone says, oh, we all knew it was a bubble. Well, we didn't, right? Think about the environment in the same way. At the moment, we're in the ridicule phase. People say, I saw David McWilliams talking about the environment. Well, he doesn't really know what he's talking about, or that's not really our concern. The next phase will be the violent opposition phase, where those who are threatened by new ideas on the environment, for example, will come out and ridicule you and oppose you.
The risk, of course, is that while we procrastinate and debate the issue, that the planet itself will respond in its own way.
We may feel that because we're in a part of the world that won't immediately feel those effects, that we'll be all right, but we won't.
There doesn't seem to be the realisation of the importance of the effects of climate change and what it will do going forward.
How can you predict instability? I mean, we're already seeing it with the freeze this winter.
I don't think there's anything we can do about it. I think if we think we can, I think it's possibly too late.
Many people in Ireland think we're a small country, we really don't matter. Why make a big fuss about us, when there's a big global issue regarding climate change?
Well, if every country took that attitude, nobody would ever move. I mean, this is the dilemma that everybody's in terms of climate change. Nobody wants to move first. Everybody is saying, well, we're only a small part of it. And that's because it is a global issue.
In international discussions around climate change, the main buzzwords are adaptation and mitigation. But what do these terms mean?
Well, adaptation is the taking into account that some changes, unfortunately, inevitable. But we can only adapt in some sectors and only up to a point. Overall, it would be less costly to prevent than just to wait for the impact to happen.
Stern review in the UK said it's up to 20 times cheaper to prevent climate change happening or running out of control than it is to try and clean up the mess afterwards. Ask anyone in New Orleans and they'll tell you that. Can I give you a little fact though?
Mitigation is the term that covers the whole range of measures to reduce emission of greenhouse gases.
Frank, what are the challenges facing us in Ireland to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions?
Well, we have a legal challenge, first of all, in that we have a legally binding obligation from the European Union to reduce our emissions by 20%. And that doesn't sound too much, but it's quite dramatic, actually, in terms of the trajectory we've been on.
Ireland has the highest greenhouse gas emissions per capita in Europe. And with emissions coming from so many different sources, what will a low-carbon future be like for Ireland?
Well, the changes that we'll see, I think, will be, first of all, in how we use energy. And looking forward, say, 20 years from now, almost everybody in Ireland should be living in a house that's almost zero energy use and zero carbon emissions. Where we're driving, we'll be driving very, very super efficient cars that use very, very little energy, emit very, very little carbon. And businesses generally will have adopted essentially a very energy efficient, low carbon philosophy and practice.
It's no wonder there's so much contention around the issue of climate change, since it ties into every aspect of our existence. But with the introduction of the climate change bill here in Ireland this year, one way or another, climate change will become more real for us all.
In Ireland, as in other countries, what we have to do is break our dependence on fossil fuel.
Economics is based on the ongoing assumption that you can continue to plunder the Earth's resources, to fuse that stuff together, to create energy, to make the economy grow. But if you're convinced of the argument that the Earth's resources are finite, then that turns the entire assumption of basic economics on its head.
energy is the underlying currency of our society. It's not the euro. If you take away energy, everything stops.
If you're producing renewable energy, if you're producing technology for improving energy efficiency and so on, we can essentially create a green enterprise out of the need to cut back.
People forget that the idea 70 years ago that you would build a road and on that road you would build petrol pumps and you would put huge tanks in the ground and fill them full of petrol. People would have thought you're crazy. And yet that's what happened. And it's exactly the same thing here.
The other huge reason for taking it seriously, of course, is that it's not just changing the environment, but it's changing the economic structure of the world.
And guess what? By changing this country to deal with climate change, we're actually reinventing the country. We're actually adding jobs, we're adding huge investment into our infrastructure, into our energy capacity, and we're creating huge wealth.
Basically, it can be fixed, as far as I know, if we just change our lifestyle.
I think it's safer to plan to do something about it and be wrong than do nothing and let the world just implode.
I would be concerned about it, say, in relation for my grandchildren or what have you. I mean, I would like to leave the place in much the same way as I found it, seeing as plenty of other generations have done it before.
Ireland has everything to gain from being part of this discussion. It's time to change our whole mindset about how we will live and our children and grandchildren will live in the years to come. It's also for Ireland an opportunity to renew ourselves. And that's why I believe there's great potential in this and great hope.
Riders on the storm, riders on the storm, into this house we're born.